There has been a marked rise in the rates of depression, anxiety, social withdrawal, and even suicide. He's also the co-creator of Human Given Therapy.
In the hope I would learn something that would help my brother. Psychotherapy was not a science. It wasn't based on science. How the brain functions. It's called the APET model. CBT is challenging thought. Now, dreaming was designed by nature to be healthy. It's a healthy way of discharging suppressed emotions.
Welcome to Khan Klinics, your dedicated space for exploring the vital connections that shape your well-being. Here we dive into everything from achieving peak physical fitness by mastering sustainable weight management to optimizing your diet for a vibrant life. We're passionate about uncovering the power interplay between your mental and physical health, offering you insightful strategies to nurture both. Join us as we unlock the secrets to embark on your self-confidence and your inspiration by interviewing top-rated personalities, not from only the US, but around the world. At Khan Klinics, our commitment is to bring you evidence-based information that inspires you to confidently control your health journey and live your life to the absolute fullness. I'm your host, Amir Khan. Let's get ready to unlock the true potential of being a human with the most amazing people around us. And you particularly mentioned that do we dream more when we are anxious versus depressed versus or having PTSD or other stress disorders? So that's part of the question, one of the question I have. And if dreaming is excessive and it's healthy, why wouldn't we want to dream more if it's we waking up and we know, okay, that was emotional drain and we got it out of the system and I've been worried about something and rightly so I've vented it out.
Right. Let me take the latter part of your question first. Dreaming is very important and it's very, very healthy. And it restores the brain to homeostasis in terms of arousal by discharging the suppressed emotions. And that is very, very healthy. But in order to discharge those suppressed emotions, we are using up a lot of attention energy. We have only got a certain amount of attention energy in our brain. That's the PGO spikes, the pontificated occipital spikes, and there's a limited store for them in the base of the brain, and they focus attention. And if we do too much streaming, we exhaust that store, and we're unable to focus attention when we wake up. And because we can't focus attention, we go back into negative ruminating. We go back and thinking, oh, I had a terrible night sleep. Why am I feeling exhausted? Things are getting worse on me. And we go back in and we're setting up the next night's non-productive sleep, negative sleep, affects sleep. That's exhausting the brain. A certain amount of something can be good, too much of it can be exhausting. Take exercise as an analogy. A certain amount of exercise is extraordinarily good for us. You do too much exercise and you damage the body.
So you're saying that excess of anything is bad, but if we are going through emotional trauma or an emotional event during the daytime, we're bound to have more REM sleep. We can't control REM sleep. You if you're exercising less or more, you can control that. But we can't control how much we're gonna dream.
Yes, we can. Absolutely we can, Amir. Because the more worry we do, the more arousal in our autonomic nervous system and the more undischarged emotion we're creating within our system. If you have an understanding of that, the therapist gives it to you and it tells you it's essential. You get off the worry circuit and you do that by focusing your mind outwards. You can take exercise, you can play music, you can do a crossword. But every time you catch yourself starting to worry, focus your mind outwards. You reduce the amount of arousal. You can also teach them breathing techniques to calm themselves down as well and bring the autonomic arousal down. If you keep the lower the autonomic arousal, the less the amount of REM sleep. We know conversely that if you stop a person dreaming, and it's been done with humans and animals, their autonomic arousal goes through the roof the next morning. Curiously, one of the reasons people get panic attacks when they abuse alcohol is alcohol suppresses REM sleep. So that means they're not lowering their autonomic arousal. So the next morning when you wake up with a hangover, you're much more autonomically aroused, and it takes comparatively less stress to trigger off a panic attack. So people start getting panic attacks as a result of not getting enough REM sleep. So not enough REM sleep can cause panic attacks. Too much can cause depression.
Thank you for explaining that. It's very fascinating. Would you say that if you are then having more REM sleep, it's one of the indicators that you're either worried too much or you're concerned about something too much? Now, remember, REM in the first half of the sleep is little, and then it
Right.
progressively after 90 minutes becomes a little bit more, but especially in the second part of the sleep it's going to be longer and longer. The longer you sleep, the more you're going to have REM sleep. We are excluding those patients who have narcolepsy, who have other disorders, because their REM sleep cycles are disruptive, they're more arousal, the pattern of REM is different. But if you're having a consolidative REM paralyzed sleep, it is beneficial, but you're saying excess of it at some stage is harmful, and especially when you're dreaming something that is more scary, more,
Yes.
not like you're dreaming or having REM sleep where you're relaxed in Hawaii or on a beach versus fighting something, seeing something worrying, animals, nature, water. Would that be very plausible that the content of the REM sleep is very important?
Totally. You're absolutely right, Amir. You're absolutely right. It is not perfectly the length of REM sleep. It is actually the amount of autonomic discharge during REM sleep, the number of PGO reflexes that are fired off that actually causes the loss of energy. And whilst there's a strong correlation with the length of REM sleep, it's not a perfect one because it depends on the content. It is possible to have very relaxing dreams, in which case you'll be discharging very little in terms of autonomic arousal. So you're
Fascinating. Joe, and so tell us, would you think that the human given therapy or approach helps us think before we are going to sleep, recompose? You said you're going to have less arousal, more breathing, things like reading, going back, realizing that you have accomplished something. And it's just a mindset, what frame of mind you're going to go to bed and sleep with. Reading helps, breathing helps. What else would help?
Yeah, it depends on the reading, of course, but some reading can be very arousing. It's about getting our lifestyle correct so that we're getting our needs met. If we are working excessively long hours and we're not switching off and taking enough time to relax and have privacy, or several hours before we go to bed, we're going to bed already hyper aroused. So, but if we are living our life in balance, taking the time out to calm down, to relax, taking the time out to be with people, we would need to hang out with people, to be with people. We have a need. See, if we look at the needs, yes, we need a certain amount of security. Yes, we need a certain amount of control and status. Those are very, very important. But we also need people in our lives. We need emotional intimacy. We need people who understand us. We need teamwork to feel a part of a team where our contribution is valued. We need meaning in life. I mean, one of the most important things, if you have a genuine purpose in life, you can put up with almost any amount of suffering in order to work towards your purpose. But if you're missing purpose, then your life can start to seem very, very pointless and empty, and you will be predisposed to start binging, whether it's on food or drink or excessive television watching or whatever. So it's about getting our life in balance whilst we're awake. The sleep will fall into balance as a consequence. Not so much what you do 5 minutes.
Joe, you mentioned purpose and you mentioned meaning in life.
Yeah.
Give our audience a few tips. Why should they have meaning and purpose? When should this be developed? At what stage in their life? And how long should they keep hold of the meaning and purpose in life right now, especially considering the busy lifestyles we have, the stresses that are out there? We tend to forget that meaning and purpose matter. To a lot, it doesn't.
In a way, meaning and purpose are a form of goal setting, but we can have a pseudo purpose, which is We want to get excessively rich, or we want excessive control at other people's expense, or we want more status and steal all the status in our organization. These are pseudo purposes. Real purposes lie beyond the ego. It means that we're part of something that's bigger than our ego. Real purpose inevitably has a form of service element in it. So for many people, huge number of people around the world, that purpose comes from having a genuine religious approach to life, or a genuine spiritual approach to life. That bigger thing is serving Allah or serving God and living a life in according with those precepts. And that enables a person to make sense of all the suffering and everything that happens in their life. But for other people, their sense of purpose could come from the fact that they are working actively to improve the environment, or they're working actively in an organization that they feel is doing something worthwhile, and they are doing their best contribution. But it has to lie not in my ego, beyond myself. Purposes will wear out. I mean, I could have a purpose at one point in my life. I'm working with an organization, but I could feel that no longer really works for me anymore, that they've got too greedy or too selfish, or I'm not being challenged enough in it. So we will have to find ways of finding a better purpose for ourselves. But the key element is that it is about service. It's not about ego.
Thank you for explaining that. You said that it's about service. If it's about service, why does religion, why does social factors, and why does other things around us matter? Can't the purpose be from within us? And is that not suffice? Why does other factors that are out there matter then?
Right. Our purpose has to be without, because if it's within, it gets tied up in our ego. And our ego is a very primitive structure. It doesn't generate authentic meaning. You know, we can be surrounded in a house full of money, and we can be totally empty and wonder why we're miserable. So purpose always lies outside ourselves. But we have to go into ourselves to find the purpose, and then it's doing something outside of ourselves. So there's a connection between the inner and the outer. So it has to be bigger than our ego. Our ego, in the end, is isolating. It cuts us off from people. You can't have a genuine relationship. In a genuine relationship, we have to have mutual need satisfaction. I have to be willing to give up some security. I have to be willing to give up some control. I have to be willing to give up some status. I have to be willing to give you an opportunity to learn, because that's your need. And if I'm not willing to do that, then our relationship can't work. So
I get the point where you're saying, Joe, that the purpose and meaning has to set a goal. It's not a pseudo purpose; it's a real purpose. The purpose has to be tied to the outside, but not necessarily to a caste, a specific priest, or a purpose or a specific religion, as for that matter, but it's tied to others, and that's why we humans, we're living in the society necessarily. But it doesn't have to be based, and you have to find it within yourself, but it doesn't have to be based on a specific thing. You could find your purpose, goal, ambition, whatever you want to do from within, but it's tied to the outside, but not necessarily connected or has to be associated with a specific caste, for example, with a specific group of people, for example. Would that be true? Would that clarify the goal of what you're trying to have?
Absolutely. What you say is 100% true. And for example, in recent years, I've been doing quite a bit of work with sports people. I'm interested in the psychology of excellence, not just the psychology of recovering our mental stability, but I'm interested in states of excellence. And so I work with people at the moment from 7 different sports. How do you find states of excellence? And it's all about going beyond the ego to find a state of flow, and where you're no longer focused. You're not focused on goals. You're not focused on winning. You're focused upon forming a unity between you and the environment and the process you're involved in, and you're trusting that. So, and you're placing implicit trust in and letting it happen without any thought, because you've done the practice, you've done the training, and then the state of flow emerges when you let your ego out of it and you just let the process happen.
Thank you for explaining that, because you've summarized it. It's not about winning. It's about the process. It's about your team. It's about the trust. And it's about what you guys are going to go through together and what you're going to accomplish at the end of it. That gives you a purpose. So thank you for explaining that. That comes to a very nice, beautiful conclusion. And it makes a lot more sense now, because now when you're going out finding a purpose, the purpose is, even though found from within, it's connected to the outside, and it's not tied to any specific caste, religion, or anything. It's about how you work as a team, and the team, could be a society as well. It could be a whole different culture together, and how you find trust. So that makes a lot more sense and clarifies a lot of things. Joe, I have a follow-up question, and that is, considering we have now a new dogma in front of us, a new social media has exploded and has become very wide, worldwide spread. It has its positive, it has its negatives. What advice would you give our viewers regarding how to deal with the social media trauma that comes with it, and what therapy and how would human given therapy help in that domain?
Well, there are many wonderful and positive things that come out of social media. But just like a lot of people can enjoy certain experiences, even a certain amount of alcohol, and it's okay, it's good for them, but abuse it, and it's a bad thing. Social media does do a lot of things that are positive, but it also has a very dark side to it. And it can be a huge trigger for mental illnesses, for addictions. And one of the things we need to be aware of are young people, not allowing them to spend hours and hours on the phone, where they're exposing themselves to images which they take to be their peer group. And nature has programmed us to take in our sense of self from the people around us. But if we're looking at people on the screen all the time who bear no resemblance to our friends and the people we interact with, we can be getting weird notions about what beauty is and what we're expected to be able to do, etc., etc., that can totally distort our self-image. That's one element. I can't stress how important that is with children. But we ourselves need to be aware that some of the most skilled, gifted technicians and scientists in the world are working day by day to put hooks into the internet media to trap us and to make us addicted to it. And we have to realize that that is happening, and we have to limit our exposure to it. We have to do it just like an addict has to limit their exposure, either cut out drink completely or limit it or whatever it might be. We have to limit our exposure. And also, right on the heels of all this is coming AI. And something we really need to be aware of is there's no such thing as objective artificial intelligence. For something to be objective, it would have to be conscious. Artificial intelligence is not conscious. Artificial intelligence necessarily is always coming from a certain point of view. So it's asking itself all the time, what is it you're interested in? What is the point of view it can support you in? So it draws a biased source of evidence. Sounds really eloquent and intelligent and all the rest, but it's biasing its research to suit your viewpoint and to reinforce your prejudices. So it's extraordinarily dangerous.
Thank you for explaining that, Joe. Joe, a word or two or a final message that you would like to give our audience?
If there's one thing I would like your audience to take away from our discussion tonight or today in America, the one thing I would like you to take away is that mental illness is not an enigma. It is not some deep, dark mystery. Mental illness is the result of people not being able to get needs met. And we can look and see what's preventing them from getting those needs met and make the best evidence intervention. But locking people away in hospitals and cutting people off from life, that's not the cure for mental illness. What prevents mental illness is a life that works. And we have to remove the barriers that enable people to get a life that works, a life wherein they can get their physical and emotional needs met. That's the answer to mental illness, not some fancy scientific technique or so-called techniques.
Joe, thank you for bringing your wisdom, and we see your compassion, and we see your brilliant, simple, but yet very profound approach, and the help that you've been providing, transforming our society in general. Thank you for being on the show, and thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate it in the United States.
Thank you so much, Amir. It's been a privilege to chat with you. Thank you.
What a remarkable journey we've just experienced together. The path to health isn't always straight, but it's always worth the effort. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your wellness journey, armed with new knowledge and a fresh perspective. If today's episode left you inspired, share it with people, someone who need to hear this. Give us a thumbs up and your opinion. Keep exploring, keep evolving, and we'll see you in the next episode of Khan Klinics.